for
business.
somebody else.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday. I see we got the treasurer.
Yes.
Huh?
Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director, and I'm going to first go over the financial data that we have for the Treasurer's Office. Okay, our Treasurer's Office is funded by the General Fund. So, but they are one of our departments that bring in the majority of our revenue. So their revenues will exceed their expenses because of that. So one of the largest areas on their budget for revenue is our taxes, our property taxes. And in total, all taxes that they are budgeted for, it's $21,583,000. We brought in $1,943,000 basically. And so that's just the beginning of the collections for this year. We should be seeing that also increase. Large influx of property tax revenue will be collected in April because that's where the first half of taxes are due. And then they have some other small budget items here. Goods and services is the next largest, or fines and penalties in goods and services. Goods and services are budgeted at $217,650, and we've brought in $40,778. The fines and penalties, $300,000. We brought in $52,250. And then miscellaneous is their next largest budget revenue item at $2.7 million. And we've received $157,000 in that line for unclaimed property receipts that we got from the state. And we also have $398,000 in investment income that came in during the month. So I don't anticipate any issues at this point with any of our revenue projections or budget projections on the revenue side.
So the taxes, that's all property taxes?
Predominantly, yes.
So the million we get on sales tax, is that in here or does that go
No,
someplace else?
it's someplace else. Auditor,
Okay,
I'm not sure why, but the auditor's office receives the
is where
sales tax revenue.
that's shown. So
Yeah.
this is primarily property taxes. So we get about
Yeah,
21 plus in property taxes, another 11, 12, 10, whatever in the,
in sales tax.
right, okay.
Is miscellaneous primarily constituted of the unclaimed property receipts and investment income?
Well, the current actuals, that's what it is, but our budget is primarily budgeted based upon investment income.
And that the unclaimed property is not from the state. It's when we foreclose on property, and if we have any excess funds, they sit in the treasurer's fund until 3 years. And then if the owner of the property that we foreclosed on does not apply to receive those funds, then they get turned over to general fund.
So that one's tough to budget for.
Yeah, that's a total,
Yeah.
I mean, we could, estimate an amount, but we're trying up until that 3 years. We send them letters and remind them, hey, you need to turn in this application and, prove that they're the person that should be receiving the funds and all the documentation.
Okay, any other questions on revenues? Okay, we have expenses, and our expenses for our Treasury Department are primarily personnel at budgeted $937,110. Our actuals were $188,000, and that represents basically 2.5 months worth of salaries and benefits. And so, we haven't booked the, other half of March, salaries yet. And so that is, we're a little bit below target just because of that. On our supplies, it's budgeted 18,500, and we have already expensed $12,125, but I think we had a expense on our property tax materials that went out.
Yeah, a lot of the supplies on that line are for tax statements. The, paper and printing are under the supplies column.
And then on services, we had budgeted 140,626, and our actuals are 122,523. And that's primarily because of internal service billings. 82,000 of that 122,000 is our internal services for IT and risk management and industrial accident. So for expenses, I don't see anything unusual here to report.
Kathy, are internal services typically billed once a year for the most part?
Yes,
Okay.
they're billed in January and most departments
For
pay.
most departments? Okay.
Yeah, and most departments pay in January. They'll pay in January or maybe first part of February. And as far as personnel, we have 10 FTEs for our Treasury Department. And we currently show no vacancies for their department right now.
Let me go back to, I apologize, go back to property taxes. Is that the gross number? There, right? I know, is that the gross number and then the county keeps their portion and the rest go out to fire districts, or this is just the county portion?
This is just the county portion.
So the gross number would be somewhere around, any idea?
Oh,
It's much higher than this. 'Cause
Yeah,
The
I
county
don't-
portion is pretty small, right? We're
Mhm.
about, I think, less than 2% or something like that.
I don't remember those numbers, but yes, the total of all is, I don't want to guess at the number, but
Yeah,
this is just for current expense because we also collect for county road and that's in its own fund.
right. I just, out of curiosity, if that's easy to look up, do you mind shooting me an email?
Okay.
Of what percent of
I
total?
I
tax?
just be interested in the gross, because people look at the property taxes and they go, well, this isn't gross, this is what the county gets, but the gross is way much higher than that, that pays for much more than the county,
Yeah, we can get that for you.
just for my own
Yeah,
curiosity.
if you can break it down and show what percentage of the gross do we keep? That'd
Well,
be a good number.
you have a sheet because, and I used to have it, and I probably still have it somewhere, that shows how property tax is broken down. And the county was actually, we're about, I think the last sheet I saw was about 1.7 or 2% of it. Wasn't a huge deal, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll break that down and send it to all three of you so you have that information.
And then the treasurer also has a fund called Treasurer Investments, and this is very small amount of revenue coming in, goods and services budgeted 200,000. And this is related to investment services. And so they brought in so far this year $43,592. And miscellaneous revenue is interest income on this fund.
So this fund is our investment pool. So the 200,000 in revenue is just the expense or the fees that we charge. So all of the funds that are within our pool are charged a fee for the investment services. And so the fees that we get come in here, and then that pays for all of our expenses for running the investment pool.
How many investments does the treasurer's office have? Because we have the other investments that brought that other income in under miscellaneous.
The interest earnings from our investments go into current expense. The interest earnings don't go into here, just the fees.
Okay,
So the, under miscellaneous in the general fund, that's where all the
earnings go.
earnings go.
Okay.
So we collect this 200,000, we estimate it every year on, our total average daily balance of the pool and come up with how many basis points we're gonna charge to our participants. And then we have the investment advisor that helps us with, the investments, and we pay a portion of our, investment deputies' salary comes out of here as well. And so those fees are being paid through this fund.
Are the fees level to the participants? Like, the different municipalities that participate in that, do they all pay the same fee or is it proportionate to what they invest?
They all pay the same fee.
Yeah, so in this fund, revenue is budgeted 200,000 and our expenses are budgeted at 200,000 as well. And as Deborah said, it's a portion of one person. That's the transfer for 65,000 that we have budgeted. And then services are for the external advisor. That's budgeted at 123,000.
And that supplies amount, because I was confused on that too. The supplies was, we pay for the programming. We have an investment program that keeps track of all of our participants and helps us allocate the interest earnings. So that's a fee that is paid for the program that we use.
And that's all I have on the financials.
Okay.
Yeah, just a few things that I wanted to talk about was, the first half property taxes are due by April 30th. Second half is October 31st. For the first quarter of 25, our collections is at 6.97%. Last year was 7.54%. And I think the reason that it's down a little bit is last year we were able to get our tax statements out on February 6th. This year, we didn't get them out until February 20th, so we've been collecting, less days. Part of that was some issues that we were having with our tax receipting system and getting you got to go through all the steps. And when we have any issues, we work with the vendor on figuring out what they are. And so just waiting to get that whole process done to get those out. We always try to get those statements out by February 14th. That's what historically it's always been. People start calling, taxpayers start calling, beginning of February, wanting those tax statements. And so we try to get them out as quickly as possible. One of the other things I brought was we collect the real estate excise tax. So the number of affidavits that we brought in for the first quarter of 25 was 932. Last year was 792. The year before was 877. But going back to 22 was 1,328 and the same amount for 21. So with the way the market's been, that number has been falling. But from last year, 792 in the first quarter to 932. So the real estate transactions are coming up a little. So that's,
Yeah. That's a positive sign, right?
Yeah. I looked this morning just to check, and the 30-year average home loan right now is at 6.8%. But with the way that many homeowners are locked in at the 3% interest, on their mortgages, it's, the inventory is still low, and how that market is going, so. Another good news is last year, 24, so I didn't have a separate position for chief deputy. My investment officer was my chief deputy, and then my foreclosure deputy kind of helped with the front office and with the excise tax and kind of helped with those processes. And so in the budget process that we did for 24, for 25, I asked to have my chief deputy separated from my investment deputy because I needed more help up front. And that was approved in the budget. And so now I have a chief deputy, and then, so she was my foreclosure deputy, who's now my chief deputy. I have a new foreclosure officer. So I don't know if you guys remember in January when we had to write off some of those delinquent personal properties. We, this last year have been working hard on getting those collections and getting that cleaned up. So just to report, in July of 24, we had 236 delinquent personal properties. And what happens is if a personal property business closes and they shut down, and there's nothing we can distrain on because their equipment's gone, and we lose that revenue and we have to write it off. So we've been working hard and tracking down these businesses and working with the assessor's office. And in the meantime, there's been 31 businesses that were closed that were still on the roll that we've cleaned up that. We've gotten 8 of the businesses on payment plans, and we are down at this time to only 7 delinquent personal property. Come
Wow.
April 30th,
That'll go up.
that'll go up for who does not pay, but we are going to, start on them right away on those payments because to distrain the property, we're supposed to go out there right away and start selling their equipment. And that's not something we want to do. And we are trying to work with them to either get them on a payment plan or, whatever we can to stop that from being an issue. So I'm proud of my staff for getting that all caught up, and we'll see how things look on April 30th
No, that's
or
good
after
job.
April 30th, once we get all the tax. It takes a few days because we accept postmarks up to April 30th. So it'll take a little time to get all the mail processed.
So if a business closes and takes all their equipment and is gone, but the property's still there. So why would we fail to collect property taxes off of that piece of property? Somebody owns that.
Yeah, there's real property and then there's personal property. So if the person that has a business and they own the real property, we can attach their personal property taxes to the real property account. But if they're renting a building or, they don't own the real property and
But if they're renting, doesn't the owner of the property owe the property taxes?
they owe the real, yes. And we're just talking about personal property for the equipment
Okay.
that a business owner owns. All right. The other thing I could report on is for our investment, Cowlitz County Investment Pool, our balance on the first quarter, our total portfolio is $411,700,000. And we ended the first quarter with a interest rate of 4.59%. So the rates are sticking around there. I looked this morning because we keep our liquidity portion, about 30% of our pool in the Washington State local investment pool. And their rate as of today is 4.38%. So it was 4.39 at the end of March, so it's holding steady at the LGIP.
And that's liquid money?
That's our liquidity portion of our pool.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That
It
is.
has a 23-day average maturity at the
Mhm.
state investment pool. So as soon as the rates start dropping, the LGIP will
Yeah.
drop right along with it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, do you have any other questions? All right.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Brad Thurman, Cowles County Sheriff, and joined by Jason Lorraine from the Prosecutor's Office. And we're here today just to follow up with our meeting from about 2 weeks ago. We were talking about the county dog control ordinance, specifically the declaring dangerous dogs and potentially dangerous dogs, that portion of it. And as a follow-up to that, myself and Mr. Lorraine had a phone call with Mark Scheibmeyer on Friday. He's the county's hearing examiner and currently has an agreement with the county. And reading it, it looks like it's kind of open-ended to take on new duties. Currently it addresses health and human services and building and planning, but there is another sentence that says he can take on other things. Speaking with him, he is willing to do so, and he has done so up in Lewis County for many years. And from that conversation, a couple things, I guess, points to make. One is currently there's a cap on his agreement for $20,000, which would be at $250 an hour. That's 80 hours a year. He said the last few years he hasn't even come close to touching that amount of money, so it probably would work unless there's some big projects coming up. The other portion of that would be to do an addendum. Currently, the agreement specifies that he has to come down here in person for hearings and does so. And as he pointed out, that's about 2 hours travel time at $250 an hour to come down here to do hearings. And so he's not objecting to doing like some kind of digital Zoom type hearings on these things. I know we had a discussion about that with Mr. Lorraine. I guess some people do want to have an in-person hearing. So I don't know what the board's thoughts are on that. I was thinking we could maybe make an option if we wanted to go down that road with him and have a hearings examiner and give the individual that wants to contest their case option of either doing it on Zoom or in person. So that's essentially, I think, where we're at with him. He's willing to do it, and we just be a matter of amending the county ordinance and getting that approved and set that motion in place to make that happen. And I don't know if Mr. Lorraine has anything to add to that conversation.
I think Mr. Scheibmeyer brought up a couple good points on the process of being in person versus having like a Zoom hearing. And his point, it goes directly to be the opportunity to be heard. People, when they're in person, have that feeling of being heard, whereas over Zoom, it's really impersonal. And they're not likely to walk away with what is already an unpleasant experience, feeling as if they did have that opportunity. I think his preference obviously would be to have the in-person. My suggestion is that that's probably an appropriate way to approach it. We know that the county prefers to have Mr. Scheibmeyer down here performing his duties as a hearing examiner. Obviously, Zoom reduces costs. That's $250 one way. That's $500 round trip. That's expensive, especially when we have an 80-hour cap. That's 2 work weeks for most of us who are working for the county. So that's something for the board to consider, whether or not you want to have actual hearings here, which in this instance, there are potential criminal attachments to a determination of a dangerous animal. Not in the initial one. There are obligations from that initial hearing, but once animal is determined to be dangerous or potentially dangerous, the next time there is certainly a criminal attachment. So having an in-person hearing affords better due process. That's probably one of the issues that occurred up in Lewis County back in 2016, the lack of that option of hearing. So those are things for this board to consider. Ultimately, there should not be a conflict of having an independent attorney being the hearing examiner in this, so the county can defend any decision that is made by that independent attorney in a Roush appeal, which is an appeal to Superior Court, which will have to be written into the quote itself. So I think going forward, as we suggested last workshop, the hearing examiner might be the best option. It's available. It's just how this board wants to go forward with it, in person or Zoom or a combination of both. It's
How does
really-
he currently do it for the other ones that he does hearings for?
What was that again?
How does he currently do the other hearings that he does for us? Does he do those by Zoom? Does he do them in person? Is it a combination?
It's required to be in person. But as of right now, he said that he's nowhere near the 80 hours work that in prior years he may have arrived at.
Sheriff, historically, how many of these dangerous animals situations do we have a year?
You've spoken with some attorneys and dangerous animals, probably about 5, I would say, historically.
Yeah, we took this on, well, last year. We didn't deal with that previously. And last year, I don't think we had any last year. I know currently we have 1 pending, but I would, at the most, I'd say 5 or 6 probably is what we'd be looking at. And that's, if we make the declaration or serve them, then they have to request a hearing. So not everyone who gets served with this notice would request a hearing. They just comply with it.
And as the sheriff informed the board last workshop, there is the potential written into the code that we could combine them, because once we've served them, provided them proper notice, those hearings can be set out within a duration, but you can extend that duration up to about 90 days. So we could combine a number of hearings for one day. And when we discussed that with Mr. Schadmeyer, he said that would be ideal. He could sit down and hear a number of cases.
So if we're doing in person and he's got an hour's travel time each way and each hearing takes an hour, I guess I don't know how many hearings he could hear in an hour, but how many cases he could work through. But if you had 6 a year and you narrowed it down to 2 people at each one of those hearings, we're looking at what, $1,000 each time he has to come to have a.
It seems reasonable. Yeah, I think your assessment of about an hour per hearing is about right.
Okay.
And is he guaranteed a minimum of an hour if he shows up for one and it's only 15 minutes long, or is it prorated based on how long he actually is in a hearing?
Now, that's something that can be discussed with him. We don't deal with the dollars and cents. That's the board's job, but 15 minutes.
I
is
know, I mean,
15
his
minutes.
current contract,
It just says an hourly rate of 250 on the contract. There was no,
check how he bills us.
And even though he's not near 80 hours right at the minute, what's the average been for his current contract? How close does he get to that 80 hours each year for the last however many years he's been doing this?
the last 4 years, he said since COVID, he hasn't gotten anywhere near the 20,000 or 80 hours worth of work.
Okay.
He's probably had 1 or 2 hearings with planning for a while. The most extensive hearing that he had was a case that had some 30,000 documents and exhibits that he came to the board, or our office came to the board and asked for an extension or an increase to permit him to review each one of those items. I mean, that was Obviously, that wasn't something that you planned for, but it can be something that needs to be done. Be
Okay.
that as it may, his work was thorough, and every reviewing court that looked at his decision followed his decision by the word. So he does good work.
Okay,
And I'll mention too, he did the special use permit for the gun range here for us about 3 or 4 years ago. And I know that was pretty extensive. And in some cases, you're paying him beyond the hearing. You're paying him to write up the result in order from that. And that was a multi-page document too. So I think that was another big one that he did as well. But like I said, in the last few years, he has not had any big projects like that from the county.
Those types of things are all one-off, and it usually comes to us for approval before it's done, because we know it's one-off.
Precisely.
So what I'm hearing is, if we change the ordinance, he's willing to do this, we need to adjust the ordinance to include that in along with the regular duties. I'm hearing the 20,000 probably gonna work. I mean, if we need to adjust it, we can adjust it, but it sounds like it's probably gonna work from the past year's experience, unless there's one big thing that kicks in.
That's an accurate assessment.
Okay.
Having an addendum to the contract to could ensure ease in process rather than, oh, I'm at my 20,000 or at my 80 hours. And, you know, we've got these additional things. We're not even through the month of September. Then we'd have to come to the board, or he would have to come to the board for further increase in the funds. So having that addendum could assume, you know, a little wiggle room into the contract. It's really something that the board should consider.
Well, I don't know what you mean by wiggle room.
Um,
Do you want a different figure there, or do you want a different wording?
Not a different figure as far as financially, but increasing the amount that the county is willing to pay him for an annual fee, the potential for fee. And the wording could be, you know, regarding the dangerous animal decisions, or, you know, limiting it to just that function. It's an option for the board to consider. We can stick with what the current terms of the contract are, with his recitation that he hasn't hit that in the last 4 years, and it doesn't appear that it's likely to do so. We don't know what's in store with planning right at the moment, and usually planning is the office that tends to use his services
Right.
more than any other.
But the ordinance and the contract are two separate things, right?
Correct. The ordinance itself, there's some minimal changes in there. We've already changed the ordinance for the hearing examiner to permit him to hear appeals or anything regarding dangerous animals going forward. So that's not a problem. It's just changing 613, the process in 613 for the dangerous animal determination.
So those changes to the ordinance were good there. The other things we're talking about are contract.
Finances.
And right now, under the contract, we want in-person hearings, and the question is, do we want a in-person Zoom, or do we want an option? Is that the question? Because right now it's in person, right?
Well, currently, we haven't had any under the new ordinance yet, so it really doesn't specify, I don't think, on the hearings. It could be.
How he does it is in the ordinance, not the contract?
So let me bet. Historically, Cowlitz County has required its hearing examiners to be in person, not to perform anything via Zoom. And so we're taking the approach that, again, the county prefers that Mr. Schobmeyer appear in person and perform those hearings in person.
Okay.
And my suggestion is that performing those hearings in person is actually a good thing, because people who are subject to the hearing.
I'm not arguing with that. I'm trying to figure out where that is.
I don't
Is it-
know.
Is it in the ordinance or is it in the contract?
It's not in 613. It
Okay,
may
so
be in the
then
hearing
it's just
examiner
a-
ordinance.
I'm not sure I understand either.
Yeah.
Well, in Mr. Scheibmeyer's current contract, it specifies that his hearings will be in person.
Okay, that,
So that's
so that's
in the
where that
existing-
that
the
is. So
existing-
I personal opinion, I tend to agree. In person, people want it there. So I don't think I'd change
Okay.
that. So I think the only change that's needed is really putting in the ordinance that he can hear the dangerous animal cases.
That's correct, yep.
Yeah.
You can just leave it generic, a hearings examiner, not necessarily him, then after the ordinance is in place, can contract with him or,
Yeah, and if we need to adjust, if we see things happening, and we need to adjust the contract, I think we'd be more than willing to do that.
Jason, what you were, I want to make sure that I understood what you were saying with regards to the wiggle room. Were you saying that we could amend his contract to say $5,000 of it will be for animal rights and not to exceed that? And if so, we would need to make an amendment of the 20,000. Is that what you were talking about?
We could either do that, earmark 5 of the 20 for dangerous animal or increase to
5,000, yeah,
25,000.
Okay.
That, I'm just giving you options to
Yeah.
consider. It's really not my place to discuss what you want to do financially.
But as it stands right now, going into the future, it looks like his current contract would cover the amount of time and money without crowding the total on that. It looks like it'd be okay the way it's set up right now.
According to Mr. Schadmeyer, he believes that he'll fall within the 80 hours that are listed within his contract. And so I think that it's reasonable to go forward. I would just, again, my job is to provide you options.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, I think the simple way to just say, have it included in his contract and be done.
Yeah, just add the language for the dangerous animals.
So just amend the ordinance so that he can look at that and then the contract will just be what it is.
That sounds good. We
Okay?
can get that done.
that'll work, so. Guess we'll bring an amended ordinance back to you here.
Yeah.
Great.
The second issue I just wanted to talk with you about was since we last met, we'd had a couple meetings with Longview and Kelso. One was with the Humane Society of Southwest Washington. Then the next day we had one without them. But I guess long and short of it, moving forward, Longview is interested in going out for a request for proposal for animal sheltering. That's kind of the direction from their council, and they've asked the other cities in the county to join them in this. And towards that end, they'd like to form an ILA, kind of jointly specifying specifications for animal sheltering, then going out for a request for proposal to see what's out there, who may want to step up and do that. We did discuss out in our meeting with the Humane Society of Southwest Washington, said they'd are comfortable with that. They'd be willing to bidder on the process. And I guess they did so down in Clark County here a few years ago, and they were actually the only entity that came forward with a proposal to do that. So they're aware that is coming. That's, they deal with that with other entities in Clark County and are expecting that. So I guess the question for your gentleman today would be, are you willing to allow myself, Mr. Lorraine, to enter into discussions with Longview and the other cities that want to participate and form an ILA to move forward with an RFP on animal sheltering for the future?
So then if we were all together, it'd just be one contract for the county, basically.
Yes.
Assuming all the cities and everybody wanted to be part of this.
That's the intent, yeah. To
Yeah.
kind of gather together and have one contract and I guess be all on the same terms of what we're paying.
That was part of the conversation in the beginning, wasn't it? That's what we were shooting for?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. They, I guess, kind of put out separate contracts, had separate terms for the county versus the cities. We did kind of come together jointly and negotiate with them, but that's our intent. I think we're stronger when we bargain together.
Yeah. I don't have any heartburn with it.
Me neither.
No, I don't.
Klamath seems, they may not want to do it. They seem to be happy doing what they're doing, so.
Yeah, they really never have
Yeah.
participated in that. And Longview's willing to take the lead with their legal counsel and drafting that. And certainly, I think Mr. Lorraine would represent the county's interest as well on that. That is the plan, if you guys are amenable to that.
I'm good with it.
We do-
Yeah, I recently in a conversation with Todd Deinhardt about how Woodland resolved theirs. Being an accountant by nature, he went through line by line, every single animal that he got from the Humane Society, what they were claiming that they picked up animals in Woodland. And he went through line by line with address by address and eliminated 2/3 of what they claimed because they were outside city limits. And he pushed that over on the county because it was county animals, not, so he felt really good that he greatly eliminated a major portion of that contract because the animals were actually outside of Woodland city limits. So, yeah.
The same thing happened with Castle Rock as well. so.
Yeah, I can imagine that a major portion of this is gonna get pushed out on the county if people are paying that close of attention to it, so. But the flip side is the Humane Society can jack the numbers up on everybody. They're gonna use those numbers to their advantage.
Yep, and just for this year, I know it turns out Castle Rock and Woodland are wound up paying the same amount for animal services, which isn't really proportionate to population or anything. So that's why I think it's good to get everybody together in the same room and set some parameters that are kind of equal across the board, and so it's equitable.
Yeah. I think it's worth the effort, sure.
Me too.
Okay. Alrighty, well, we'll be back.
Okay,
Thanks, Sheriff.
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jordan, you got off easy today.
He was on vacation last week. He missed out.
Yeah. Okay. Any miscellaneous guys? Okay, we can recess till 10. Okay, we're back from recess. We'll head into agenda items. I see IT is the online. He's at a conference, so we'll skip down finance department.
Morning, Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. We have a agenda item for resolution to establish a petty cash fund for our cafe that's at the Hall of Justice. We're requesting $500 to make change so that we can accept cash transactions. We currently have been accepting card-only transactions, and we've been keeping track of complaints about that from the people that have visited the cafe. So we're requesting to establish a petty cash fund, and we've procured a safe and all the things necessary according to the treasurer's policy for having a petty cash fund.
I got no problem with it.
Yeah,
So I set up, they have a procedure at the end of the day, they close and lock everything all up and do an accounting process when they close the safe.
Yes, and so we have a secure storage room that we're going to have the secure safe in. And we also have a program that we have to keep track of all those sales. And my department will be recording the miscellaneous receipt and reconciling.
Okay,
How many complaints do we have so far?
Excuse me?
How many you said you're keeping track of the complaints about not having cash? How many do we have?
I don't know. I think it was a total of maybe we've been open 2 weeks. And so I think it's been a total of maybe 3 or 4 a day requesting to have cash transactions.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, I think if we're gonna have it open, we need to do whatever we can to help it create revenue, so.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we want that to be, we want it to be a break-even operation, so.
Okay, thanks. I guess, Travis, you're online?
Yeah, I am. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mhm.
All right. Not sure. I don't think video is working for some reason. Switch my camera here, but I'm going to proceed without that.
Okay.
So, all right. First up is a new policy is being proposed for electronic communications. The new policy replaces the electronic mail and text messaging policy, which was revised last 10 years ago. The policy is updated to incorporate provisions to reflect changes in communications platforms and the way we utilize them. In the past, it was appropriate to store emails in offline files, commonly known as PSTs, due to the capacity constraints on the email server and the network. The capacity limits on the email platform are now significantly higher. PSTs and offline file storage are no longer necessary for archival. It's also problematic to do that for multiple reasons. One of them is that it's hard to support them and they make it difficult to fulfill public records requests. Additionally, the other change in the policy primarily is that instant messaging is now very common in business, and the county's been slow to adopt the technology, partly because of our lack of policy. So this is the first step in moving that forward by revising the policy to incorporate instant messaging and clarify that it's like text messaging and that it's intended to be used exclusively for transient communications. So if you approve this moving forward with the proposed change, IT plans to work to enable the use of the available instant messaging platforms to the extent that they can be supported and governed. And that's the first item up. Any questions?
So is this the Teams stuff they've been talking about?
It is. We're generally referring to it as instant messaging because instant messages could be enabled in other platforms also, but for all intents and purposes today, that's probably going to represent 99% of all instant messaging supported or by the county.
Is this only in-house instant messaging?
Initially, the intent is to roll it out exclusively in-house. It could be enabled to be used with other corporations explicitly, named corporations that we might do business with or government entities that we might do business with. But initially, it's intended to be exclusively internal.
Travis, are there gonna be any additional costs or anything that we're gonna have to amend implementing this process, this new process?
I think the biggest cost is for the learning curve. You know, this platform is already included in our existing licensing agreements. It's more about learning curve and understanding how to leverage it, implement it fully, utilize it. So one of them, for example, would be learning how to do records requests and fulfill those. We've already started down that. We've demonstrated that we have the capability to do that, but we'll need to delve into that a little further. But it's mostly just training and learning curve.
So the intent of this is to be in-house communications that are business related to the county and not just a general BS session going on?
That's exactly right. Yes.
Okay.
So it becomes certainly more convenient to send messages that say, you know, hey, here's something that's new for sale, or are you at your desk? Can I come visit you? That sort of thing. So there's just, you know, very transient messages that today are sometimes phone calls, but sometimes they're also people are not at their desk. You can't tell. And so it just fulfills a need that is used quite commonly, similar to what people use, you know, their SMS text messaging for, but that's also comes with its caveats and challenges.
What's the retention time on this platform?
We've defined it in this policy as 90 days. It could be set longer or shorter, but we've intentionally used 90 days because there's been some litigation throughout the state with shorter retention periods. And we've currently used shorter retention periods in configuration. So we plan to extend that once the policy is adopted.
Who's going to monitor this system as far as being used appropriately and that it doesn't become records that are going to cause us a problem for discussion purposes?
Yeah, that's going to be the responsibility of the department heads, and they'll be expected to review it in a similar way that they currently have the responsibility to review emails.
Okay.
Travis, who was all involved in putting this together?
I think the primary folks involved were legal, David Berger,
Okay.
and then Bailey from the retention office, and myself.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions on it? Okay. Thank you, Travis.
Thanks, Travis.
Sure.
Thank you.
If I may, while I have the floor, can I just have one more minute of your attention?
Yeah,
Certainly.
Yeah, for awareness, I wanted to bring up a separate item and just bring it to your attentions for general awareness. But the IT department is going to be exploring opportunities to partner with a new strategic service provider or providers. Our current vendor who provides general IT services and augments our staff for specialized skills and experience, mostly related to IT infrastructure and workstations, has been unable to meet our needs for critical skills with IT engineers on an as-needed basis. The current contract and their primary line of business is to provide recurring services with a comparable number of hours and services every month. We're finding it more valuable to have the capability to burst that's more project related as opposed to more steady and more recurring. And so because of that, we're going to look to look for opportunities to partner with other providers who can provide that need on an as needed basis. We've found that to be more valuable while backfilling a staff member who separated a year or so ago. And as we've gained a better understanding of our needs, it's more apparent that we should explore the services of other providers. And then additionally, we're going to continue exploring a relationship with a service provider who can provide ERP support. The urgency of that need just recently increased as we have very limited capacity and redundancy among internal staff who support our ERP platform. And a key staff member will likely need to take some time off unexpectedly. So we're going to continue the market research that was previously started with vendors and work to move that to contract and begin services in short order as soon as practical.
And Travis, am I correct in saying that the current vendor that we have has agreed that they're not able to really fulfill our needs based on what with their current capacity and what it is that they do for us? We actually need more than what they're able to offer us at this point?
That's correct. It's a combination of their inability to meet some of the needs we have in terms of being able to burst for services, but it also does not necessarily align with their business model. And so in recent discussions, we've agreed that it's probably advantageous for us to consider alternatives.
okay,
All right, thank you.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public Works.
Good morning, Commissioner Sean Roy, Public Works. Today we have 4 agenda items to cover. The first 2 are going to be call for bids. The first call for bids for the replacement of the Cowlitz County Admin Building roof. Those will be scheduled to be opened on May 12th at 1:30. The second one is for our countywide pavement overlay project. This is the asphalt overlays you see throughout the county. We're estimating about 10,782 tons of material going on the road this year. And that will be opening also on May 12th. Next up is some agreements, contracts, and bids. The first one, not the first time you've seen this, is in regards to the Residential water meters, equipment and software from Correct Equipment, not to exceed $425,567.16. We awarded this a while back. We were just going through some of the process, and now we're ready to execute contract with them. And then last up is the bid award to Sterling Breen Crushing Incorporated for aggregate for the chip seal process. The total cost on this is $431,523.94, and that's a delivered product to our road shop sites for chip sealing this summer. So on that one, we did have 4 bids. Both 3 of them were all within about $20,000 of each other. And then the 4th one was about 100,000 higher on that. So very comparable bids in this one.
You know, a quick question on both those.
Mhm.
The first one, the water meters, those were ARPA funds, weren't they? That we set aside for that?
Yes, sir. Those are all going to be funded by ARPA.
And that's actually, we set aside, I think, $500 million. This actually came under, yeah. And this, we've seen when we did rock and stuff for our roads, it was just kind of, we took all bidders because depending on where we're doing the work, does this not work that way? Is this a little different?
Correct. This is going to be delivered to site and stockpiled on site. So we just award to one bidder as it's
Okay.
the known quantity.
Okay,
And that's to all the county road shops that they'll deliver that to.
Yep. Sometimes, some years we'll have pits around the county that aren't at a road site. Actually, yep, we do have one of those pits on Headquarters Road. That's not an actual road shop, but that's the closest to the area they'll be chip sealing that year. So we try and strategically place them throughout the county.
gotcha, okay. Anything else?
That's all I have. Any additional questions at all? Awesome. Thank
Get
you.
off easy today.
John.
Hey, we'll see you tomorrow.
Facilities maintenance, we covered all those, so we're all good. We're down to miscellaneous. Does Jennifer need to be here, or is that? Ren, do you have something? Okay, do you, is HR gonna be here, or are you good with it? You're, okay. Time frame, do you think? 10, okay. We can take care of that now. We'll go into executive session for contract negotiations, 10 minutes.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 10:33 a.m.
Okay, back from executive session, no decisions rendered. Jessica, we can head right into HR.
I shouldn't have made you guys come out here because I just have more executive sessions
Okay,
to request. I have 3 performance of a public employee, qualifications of an applicant, and collective bargaining.
performance of a public employee, qualification as an applicant, and what was the third?
Collective bargaining.
And how long?
20.
20 minutes?
Mhm.
Okay. We'll go into executive session.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 11:01 a.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 11:07 a.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 11:13 a.m.
You need on those? Just a head nod. Okay, we're back from executive session. No decisions made. I'll turn it over to Jessica.
Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have a request from Risk Management. Kathy's requesting to increase the step for her risk manager to step 9 effective May 1st. And this is just one step above what she currently is at.
And that's in recognition of completing a couple certifications.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Right?
And then I have a request for my own office. I'm requesting to start my candidate for the deputy director position at step 5 based off of the experience that she's coming with.
That's filling an open position that was at that same level.
Yep, my last deputy director was at that current level, so this would be budget neutral.
Okay. See any objection?
No,
Okay, thank you, commissioners. I appreciate your time today.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Anything else, gentlemen? Okay, we will adjourn till tomorrow morning.